Good evening and welcome to the Resistance broadcast. I'm John. Thank you so much for joining us on TRB Live. Might have been a little subdued because I'm going to do the whole break the fourth wall thing. I'm home solo with the kids tonight. So if they wake up, they're going to come down and become part of the show. I can't let that happen. So there's no we're live, baby, tonight. But we are live. It's me and James. I'm John. How you doing? Lacey is not feeling well, so she's not going to be joining us tonight. So everyone be sure to hit up Lacey at Lacey Gilleran on your favorite social media app and tell her to feel better and get back in the base soon, because we will miss Lacey tonight as we talk about Ahsoka, James. We're talking that trailer. I know you did your short, so people got to see your initial reaction, like your immediate 1-minute reaction.
True, yeah.
And we'll get into that. That's going to be our main story tonight, of course, among other things. Bob Iger coming back. There's a lot to talk about. But before we do that, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's joining us live, or if you're listening on your favorite podcast app, thank you so much for being a part of TRB. Make sure you spread the word. Tell your friends about the show. If you are with us live, we are going to be doing Ask the Resistance towards the end of the show. So if you have a question that you want us to talk about on the show, just use hashtag Ask the Resistance, and we'll hopefully get to a bunch of those later. We also do have super chats available if you would like your comment read during the show. But most importantly, thanks for hanging out, being with us, and let's have some fun talking Star Wars. So, James, to warm things up here, did you happen to catch the Emmy nominations?
No. I mean, I did. I saw what Star Wars was nominated for, but like I'm not someone that pays attention to the Emmys or any real award show other than maybe the Oscars.
Did you notice the big snub that upset me a bit?
Did Mandalorian? No, I don't know. What is it? Was the snub?
Light and Magic, not nominated for Best Documentary.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, they were nominated for other things, but not for Best Documentary, right?
They were nominated for music for Light and Magic, which means they put the documentary in for consideration. And Lacey had actually mentioned that. She said, well, it was nominated for this, so they must have put it in for Best Documentary, which means Snub City. For when you think about it, that documentary is all about ILM, how all those effects and the groundbreaking nature of changing movie history went into place, and all these other shows and stuff that are being nominated might not exist if it wasn't for ILM, and it's the documentary about it. It's just ironic to me, but I always felt like the academies just don't like anything affiliated with George Lucas because he didn't like being part of the unions, and I think that's just something that has lasted for a long time, which is unfortunate because it's a brilliant documentary. But there were 2 Star Wars series nominated for big awards, and we're talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi for Outstanding Limited or Anthology Series, and Andor for Outstanding Drama Series. Do either one of those surprise you, or were you like, oh yeah, that's about right?
No, I think that's what they should get nominated for. The interesting thing that I took away from it is I've never considered the way that maybe Disney lays out their shows so that they don't have 2 shows that are competing against each other specifically. And I didn't really look at it this time either to see if that was kind of how they were nominated or what they went up against. But it's kind of funny. It was kind of funny that they all seem to be for different things, like outstanding drama versus limited or anthology series. So it's like, does it make sense that Disney would not want to put out 2 outstanding drama series the same year? Because then they would just go up against each other potentially. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it almost makes you think like their layout of like, well, what is Ahsoka or what is Skeleton Crew? You might say, well, Skeleton Crew might be drama and Ahsoka would be the limited or anthology series or whatever, because then it might, change things up. Does that kind of make sense?
I guess so. I think that the Obi-Wan Kenobi one surprised me. I don't think either series is going to win. I think Succession is going to win Best Drama, and for best anthology, I'm not sure, but I was surprised that Kenobi was nominated, to be honest with you. We've talked about that it wasn't maybe as good as we had thought it would be from a budget standpoint, and it definitely picked up steam as it went on. But I'm glad it is. At the same time, I was very happy to see that it was nominated, both of them, because anytime Star Wars gets recognized and any sort of recognition, I like that. I don't need that as a Star Wars fan. If Lucas never needed that, then I don't need that. So I love Star Wars. I don't need an academy of people who probably are that in touch with this type of storytelling to tell me whether it's worthy or not, you know? But at the same time, I think it's cool. So I don't know. I just don't think either one is gonna win the award, but it's cool that they were nominated, you know? And then Mando was nominated for some of the not major awards, but some of the smaller ones. All in all, those successful round of nominations for the series. And I think Andor getting the best drama nomination is a big deal, because Star Wars usually obviously doesn't fit in that category, and it's going toe to toe with some pretty big drama heavyweights. And that's what they were looking for Andor, I think. You know, it's not the one that's going to get the most views. I believe it was the lowest viewed Star Wars show, but at the same time, it's giving it that prestige of, look, we make award-winning content, come make Star Wars movies and shows. Maybe it's, you know, that type of draw. So
I was trying to look what Obi-Wan was up against, and honestly, I've only heard of one of those shows. So I'm like, I don't understand maybe what qualifies that as it's something different, you know what I mean? Like, it was limited or anthology series, like, what, you know, how do you define that?
Yeah.
And I also wonder if they have the ability to like submit for specific things, or do they have to submit a show and just see what it is? Because like I said, I think they would be smart not to try to put Obi-Wan in the outstanding drama, because if it does get nominated, it would be splitting the votes and stuff. So they probably chose it wisely.
I don't know if Obi-Wan fits that, because Andor is more of that grounded sort of realist drama in a sense. But imagine,
that's what I'm saying, Obi-Wan might win in this category compared to the other shows.
Imagine Obi-Wan wins, and then they make a season 2, and they take away the award because they broke the rules of not being a limited series.
Oh, that's a good point. It's sort of, I didn't even think about that. It sort of confirms. Well, they said anthology series. How does that?
Or limited. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to be funny about it.
Yeah,
but,
okay. That would be good, though.
We do have a bunch of stories to get into. So why don't we get into those right now with the Resistance Report?
It's the Resistance.
All right. Well, I think the thing we got to kick this week off with is the obvious thing. The Ahsoka trailer was officially released, as well as a pretty awesome poster, which we used for the thumbnail of this video. So if you haven't seen it, you've seen it. And the interesting thing about the Ahsoka trailer was our talk last week about whether or not we thought it was sort of held off because of the issues with Twitter. And it seemingly maybe was, because as soon as that kind of, you know, fixed itself or whatever, and people kind of stopped complaining, everybody got back to normal. Here we are with an Ahsoka trailer drop on a Monday morning. Pretty exciting. What was your takeaway from the trailer? Because I know I did my reaction and kind of said a couple quick things, but I haven't talked to you. What's up?
So I watched the trailer a couple times, and I then immediately went back and watched the other Disney Plus show trailers, because I will never forget having watched the season 3 main trailer for The Mandalorian and thinking, wow, they really opened this up and made it more cinematic, and it looks like bigger budget and bigger scale and grander. And the show didn't really give me that. So that makes me think, all right, this trailer for Ahsoka looks that way too. It looks big budget. It looks cinematic. It looks grand. But at the same time, I'm just cautiously, just from a special visual effects standpoint and a look of it, the story's going to be great because it's Dave Filoni. But I'm going in cautiously optimistic from the visual standpoint, because I think they deliberately choose certain shots to present in trailers to make it look as good as possible, as you should when you make trailers. So I'm still not sure how this show is going to look, because it was filmed in the same way, Manhattan Beach, stagecraft, volume, the same way as Mandalorian, Obi-Wan. And people have had some issues with how those shows have looked in some scenes and that sort of thing. We've talked about that ad nauseum.
And
So
Ahsoka sort of gives me a little bit of that vibe that
little
like
bit.
there might be some shots in this where you go, I feel like I can tell they're
when
standing
she's running
in the
away
room.
from the explosions. Yeah.
Yeah. And
So
yeah.
and look, that's just a visual thing. You know, it's gonna be fine, I'm sure. But this trailer looked big, but I don't know that the show is going to live up to the trailer. In the same way Mando season 3 didn't live up to the visual of that trailer. So that was my starting point. I like that I'm able to. I don't know where this show's going as far as an end game, especially with that movie that's going to really tie all this stuff together. But I like the fact that we see our three main characters that we're looking at from the Ghost Crew Rebels. We're looking at Sabine, Hera, and of course Ahsoka. And I'm seeing Hera doesn't seem like she's changed much. She seems to be the constant. She seems to be the foundation, the rock. And then I look at Ahsoka, and Ahsoka seems to be falling into that trope of that need to rediscover oneself. And I think where I'm coming from that is, and we saw that with Luke Skywalker, so I might be a little tired, but to be fair, Ahsoka's story about I'm no Jedi and walking away from it all was told before Luke's story in The Last Jedi. So this isn't, if anything, you could say the Luke story was biting off of this. But I come to that conclusion, and I think this story, a big part of the story is going to be Ahsoka's more of like the wise old Jedi, so to speak. Jedi. And I think that these are all deliberate decisions made by Filoni and Favreau to say, like, she is still the Jedi. She doesn't know it yet or believe it yet. And this show is going to be her journey back to becoming a Jedi and believing she is a Jedi. So I think for Ahsoka, it's rediscovery. For Hera, it's her being the constant, because you can't have every character going through this major shift. And then you have Sabine on the other end, who is going on a journey of finding out who she is. I think Sabine is like her growth and growing into what she's going to become by all this training. You see the message again by Ezra, which is, very similar to the end of Rebels. But I like that we see her with the long hair. So to me, anything you see with her in this long hair, is happening at the very beginning of this series, because we see her cut her hair eventually. Then there's a ton of action shots of her with the short hair. I don't think there's going to be some sort of time lapse where we see her later in the show with long hair. I think she starts with the long hair, cuts it off, then everything else happens with the classic looking Sabine.
Which I think what they're implying here with this shot is this is supposed to be sort of what they showed at the end of Rebels, but it is odd that she has the long hair.
Yeah,
it match up perfectly. But the way they like put together the clips, it's like that's the same shot at the end. And
time could have gone on, and there could have been similar actions and stuff like that. But I like that, her watching the message from Ezra in this show, she has the long hair, and then you see her cutting the hair. So we know that Ezra pops in early in this series via that message, which to me, James, and I know you were speculating Ezra might not be in the series beyond that. I actually think that locks in that Ezra will be in this series in person. If they're giving us Ezra that early in a video message and then nothing else after, I think there's no chance of that happening. So I think that actually tells us that Ezra will be in this series. And then the other stuff that stood out to me was Baylan and those two dark side lightsaber users clearly arriving to what appears to be busting out the magistrate, because she clearly knows where Thrawn is. Remember, Ahsoka asked her, where's your boss, Grand Admiral Thrawn? She knows. So she gets arrested or something. They're going to bust her out to go find Thrawn. Now, I want to know what you think. I don't know if they're necessarily going to find Thrawn for his help or to help him or to kill him in the name of Palpatine. I don't know if they work with Inquisitors. Ray Stevenson said, I believe at Celebration, that he was formerly a Jedi and he survived Order 66. And again, that's something we've seen before. I mean, look at what's her name from Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's like,
Yeah,
we
and
see a lot of these patterns happening in these series.
And
but
just real quickly, we got to mention that he says we are no Jedi.
We are no Jedi.
Yeah. I mean, so obviously there's something, and just to be real quick too, is that point you're saying about her coming back as a Jedi. I'm on the opposite side of that. I think they're defining very clearly with this show that she's not, and I think they're setting the tone of this as like, you know, this, you may have seen this character before, but you maybe don't know all the details. We're letting you know that's not what she's about. She's something else. And I think it sets up more of what Lucasfilm is doing with future stories of what is and what isn't Jedi. And I think by bringing in two characters that, you know, one or both of them have the orange lightsabers and all that, I think it's like they're very clearly setting up like differences between Sith and other dark side users, differences between Jedis and other light side users. Right. So I think that's the direction they're going. But continue on. I didn't mean to jump in with the no Jedi thing. You just got to say it. You have to say it.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. So I like to think that maybe there's a chance that we have a lot of different people looking to have different motives here, and it's not just clear-cut dark side, light side. So I'm wondering if these two are working in the name of Palpatine to preserve the true Empire and they're anti-Thrawn. That's possible. Maybe they're trying to find, like, when I initially watched these trailers and the early stuff, I thought, oh, these people, they're looking for Thrawn because they need him. But now I'm thinking, what if they're trying to find him to kill him or something like that? So maybe things are going to be even more complicated for Thrawn, which will allow Thrawn to do Thrawn things and have to use his, you know, strategy and calculation on how to execute what he needs to execute. So I don't know. I've been talking a while. I gave a bunch of points. So what do you think of what I said? But also, what do you think?
I definitely think that, I mean, I mentioned a little bit about how I thought the direction of the trailer gives us a little bit something different, that we're headed in the direction of, if it doesn't always have to be Jedi and Sith. And I think, you know, there was a little bit of speculation on Sabine having the Force powers and stuff. I think mostly that is a couple of the poses that she's in, and the fact that she's using the lightsaber, and the fact that she says master to Ahsoka, which I do not think she is Force sensitive. I think that's, I feel like,
I hope not.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, like sometimes Star Wars does that. Like obviously a very big evident moment for that would be Leia. Like you don't find out that character's Force sensitive till way later in her life. But, you know, and like, where was it all these other times when that would have come in handy or whatever? So I think you always can tell the story of a character finding out they're Force sensitive long after the fact. But I feel like that Sabine being a Force sensitive character sort of might take away from the title character, Ahsoka. I think that the show is about her and her connection with the Force and the Jedi, and her history with the Jedi, I should say. And I don't know. It's I think that this trailer, I said this in my my short little reaction, that I think this is the first trailer that sort of got me excited for the series. While I do agree with you on the I think the lackluster things that we got before, it seemed a little boring. I think they were sort of hoping that just the hype of Ahsoka alone would allow them to sort of play a longer game with the marketing. Like they could go longer by just being like, yeah, but wait till Ahsoka happens, you know, and the fans would be like, oh, I can't wait for that. They don't have to show you anything. Whereas like some of these other shows, they might have to do that. But I think that you're right. I think one of the big things coming out of this show is the fact that it's going to be, you know, Dave Filoni's story. I think Dave Filoni's story is going to be the thing that could carry it through the visual effects. If there are poor visual effects, I don't even think it's not that bad. It's just that we're trying to talk to it on what we talk about it based on what we know.
On the level
what
of
we
Star
know
Wars.
is, yeah, Mandalorian and the movies and Obi-Wan and Boba Fett. Yeah. So it, like when I'm looking and comparing those things, I'm leaning towards some of these things feel like they're a little bit more on this side rather than this side. Yeah. But I do think that story-wise, this show could be really cool. And I think that this trailer has pointed to me that they might do some crazy stuff that we've seen in animated.
100%. Yeah.
We've seen it animated before, but we've never seen it in live action. And I think most of these people, if the casual fan who just likes Mandalorian and live action Star Wars or whatever was sort of presented with a concept like a Mortis, right? How would they handle that? And it's like, I think this show might bring some of that to foreground and see how wild they can get with some of these Star Wars stories in live action to see if the audience responds to it like they would in Marvel, where they're like, okay, yeah, I get Iron Man, very grounded movie. Now, like 10 years later, he's in space and fighting aliens and time travel. And like, you know what I mean? Like how far can they stretch Star Wars with such a grounded series also going with Andor? I feel like Ahsoka can be sort of the breath of like, let's get a little wild. Let's get crazy with some of the lore here.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a bunch of shots in the trailer, some on a hologram and some people, Balin and Shin, is that her name?
Yeah, I'm not used to it yet.
Right.
I can't wait to know the characters just by heart, you know?
It takes me some while to get the name sometimes. But at this sort of like Stonehenge looking place that gets like sort of wrapped around in this map. Yeah, there it is. And that sort of like another or a portable or a transitional like portal world between worlds type thing, because it looks like mappy, sort of like how the world between worlds is. I think the show's going to get
just like Rebel maps, like on the walls. It's like, I don't know how to read those. That doesn't work to me as a map.
Yeah.
But somehow they're looking at them and plotting coordinates and stuff.
And you always
must understand it.
You always need multiple pieces to make it connect or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think this show's going to get weird. I think it's going to get strange. But ultimately, because it needs to tie in with Mando, Skeleton Crew, and all this stuff, that may have to keep it in this grounded in the way as grounded as Star Wars can be besides Andor. So I don't know. It's going to be the most fantastical of all the shows that we've seen so far.
Yeah, almost like Rise of Skywalker, where they're like jumping between, they're in the same, and people are like, okay, I can accept that. I think the other thing that is cool here, that we have something that sort of took precedent over this story, which is the world between worlds being something that was very fantastical, and yet when it was done, you wrap the series as if we didn't just do some really crazy stuff a couple episodes ago. It wraps very grounded in Star Wars, as Star Wars normally is, if that makes sense. And I think that this show very well could pull those fantastical elements and do something similar, like, oh, this door that leads to this place, knock it down, it's gone, and we have no more door, and then that just be it, and be like, okay, now we're back to being grounded. The villains were defeated and the galaxy was saved, and now we don't ever have to worry about that anymore, because nobody knows about it except for us, and we're never going to go in there
Is
again.
there any chance, now this is, and we're entering a realm of wild speculation with this one, is there any chance, because of all the rumors of Hayden Christensen being in this show, that we get him not in a flashback, maybe still Force Ghost, but seeing him some way through some portal in a younger version of himself? Preferably de-aged, unlike in Obi-Wan.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes. If you want to know the answer, is it possible? Yes. My thoughts on it, though, are going to be very stuck in exactly what you would expect. It'll be somehow Force Ghost related.
Yeah.
Probably. I think she's going to sit down and she's going to say, I'm not really sure where to go. Master, can you talk with me? And he's going to show up and we're going to have that moment. But I mean, again, we're talking about fantastical things, and all of our speculation is based on what we've seen in Star Wars before. So it's like, oh, well, they wouldn't do this because that's not Star Wars, but they can, because as soon as they do it, it becomes Star Wars.
Right.
So whatever fantastical element they're thinking of is is something that will make sense when we get it, and we just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
And that's a way that they could bring in Anakin pretty easily.
Yeah. I mean, I really enjoyed the trailer, and it definitely took my excitement for the series, which we had talked about recently, was sort of tempered to the next level. I don't doubt for a second that we're going to get a great story that's going to enrich not only the story of the Ghost Crew, Ahsoka, of course, and that whole thread, and of course, Thrawn now coming in, but also just the Force. I think we're going to get new knowledge about the Force, which is pretty cool when you think about what else is ahead for us, which is the origins of the Force with Mangold,
Right.
and the future of the Force with Rey Skywalker, and this being now in between those after original trilogy and stuff, and knowing what we knew from Rebels. I think we're about to learn some pretty cool things about the Force that is mystical, not scientific.
What do you think about this picture here?
I don't know. That looks like Ahsoka. It looks like her when she was wearing at the end of Rebels, when she was wearing like that Gandalf-y looking white cloak and she had the staff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, could this be her looking into the future at a monument of herself? That's the first thing that popped into my head. I don't know what other famous I mean, it looks like someone that is of her species. I mean, I can't tell if that's a robe or if it's her little what do they call those things?
Just like a scarf, neckerchief.
No, her tentacles.
Leku, like
Leku. Yeah,
Leku,
right. Yeah. So I can't tell if that's that or not. I think it might be, but that was my guess. What do you think?
So I think what we're supposed to speculate based on this is that it has something to do with Mortis, because you have a photo of someone doing like a hand gesture, and they all have like, the son had the hand out and the daughter had the hand like this and the father had the hand up. This one also is like going like this. And when you see, well, again, that's Mortis, but it's from World Between Worlds. So when Ezra walks up to the thing and he sees the mural, that's the mural you're looking at with the three of them. And they all have those like religious circles behind them, right? Similar to this image here. So I'm thinking that it might not have anything to do with Mortis, but whatever it is, you will say, obviously there was this connection between different societies and different people, and they obviously saw their entities like this, and this is maybe just a religious entity that they're showing us. But, and I say that meaning like, the Force or like not Jedi, but like other religions that maybe like support the Force and support other things like that. Because I don't know that some of these temples are Jedi temples, sure, but like I'm sure other temples and other things in the Star Wars universe are not Jedi. I mean, they obviously have Sith temples too, but like, you got to think there's other things out there too, right, that are just Force related powerful things.
I don't remember if it was in her Mando episode or if it was in Book of Boba Fett, but the Convor, I don't know if it was the daughter, like the Morai thing, but wasn't there a Convor watching her from the tree or something like that? So yes. Like there's still all that stuff around now, like either following Ahsoka or what have you. So that's a good point. I don't know. Then we're getting wild. That's what's happening here.
This trailer does a very good job of saying, hey, we've told you about Ahsoka. We've showed you Ahsoka, but we were kind of holding off. Now's the time we're getting started. This is your next big Star Wars adventure. Get excited. It's here. It's coming, and start putting on your tins foils hats, because we're going to be talking about some pretty crazy stuff coming up here. And I don't know, it's very interesting, and I think this is the first opportunity. I mean, obviously Dave has been doing shows for a while now, live action shows. But I feel like this is the first time where maybe this is like in his wheelhouse. You know what I mean? Like, I think he obviously loves Mandalorians and 501st and everything like that because the Clone Wars. But it's I don't know. It's all very interesting. Look at that. There's Lacey right there.
Yeah, we have a comment from the chat. This is from Lacey Gilleran, and she said, "Hi, per Wikipedia." So Lacey's just on her deathbed, doing the work for us behind the scenes. She said, "Per Wikipedia, the name Leku was also used to describe the striped head tails of the Togruta." So yeah, we got it.
Yeah.
All right, good. Thank you, Lacey. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I feel like as much as he loves the Mandalorians and Clone Wars stories and everything else that he's done, I think like when you start to get into like the wolves, like what do the wolves mean? You know what I mean? That all that stuff just feels
Wait, was there a wolf
more
in this trailer?
There was no there was no. The answer is no. But when they show Sabine, that's not what I was talking about in Rebels.
Mm-hmm.
But when they do show Sabine, she's got a little loth cat there on the back of her helmet. But
oh yeah.
But there's another pose where she's sitting down and you can see a wolf drawn on the wall.
Oh, that's cool.
Right there behind her head.
Do you think we're gonna see Sabine doing any spray painting in this show, or do you think she's over that?
Oh, I think that is important for them to showcase what this character is. Unless they're trying to say years later she's not that anymore, but I don't know why like the depression, I guess, over Ezra would force her to not be artistic anymore. It doesn't seem to make sense. It seems like also she painted the mural of them as a family after he was gone.
Right.
So I definitely think that if you're talking about introducing a broader audience to the character of Sabine, it would be the same as Thrawn not having anything to do with art either. It'd be like, what are you doing? That's the character.
Yeah. Now we were going to get to those super chats. I do see someone said they submitted a super chat, Toon Raider. We did not get that. You can try to submit it again. But if it doesn't work out for you, let us know and we'll still read your comment. So just send that a comment again if it doesn't work for you. But we do have a couple, James. So do you want to get into these?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get into them now. Do you want to go ahead and pull them up?
Yeah. So we have Matt Lawless. Thank you very much, Matt. Appreciate it, man. He said, "Hey, fellas, trailer was exciting. Live action Purgle." That's true.
It was funny. We didn't even say it.
You know why? I feel like Purgles are everywhere now. We saw them in Mando, but like straight on. Geez, those things are big. But he said, live action Purgle, the tease of Thrawn was cool as well, but where's our boy Zeb? I think Zeb will definitely be in the show. I just think because he was already literally in Mando, maybe they didn't need to use trailer time for him. So
that's fair.
Yeah. What do you?
Yeah,
what do
I think that's probably it. I also I'm wondering a little bit if Zeb is like very expensive. So like him being a main character in the show or being someone who doesn't go on the mission, but like shows up in the show at some point, like, oh, let's have it about Hera and Sabine and Ahsoka and actors with makeup. But to throw in a full CG character like that, I mean, they could do it, but I don't expect Zeb to be someone who's in the show a lot.
Okay. All right.
Really quickly about the Purgle too, though. The celebration trailer had them heading towards the Purgle, I think in the same shot that shows up in this trailer. However, this trailer showed it a few seconds before, because in the celebration trailer that space whale was like opening up its mouth and they were almost like heading into it.
Yeah, my memory. That's tough. Here's a cool comment that I'm just going to talk about because I think it's good to bring up. So Qui-Gon Jinn said Balin and Shin are the names of wolves from Norse mythology. Something to think about.
What?
And Qui-Gon Jinn may have just made that up, and now we look like fools. But if that is true, I think that's pretty cool. So at least you got your comment read, Qui-Gon Jinn. But we do have another super chat we have to get to here from Freezy. Good old Freezy 2324. Thank you, Freezy. Appreciate that up in Canada.
He did not make it up. There's been speculation elsewhere. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool.
For that. That's cool.
Do you think Ray Stevenson's character survives the Ahsoka series? Also, what is your take on Dave Filoni saying Anakin is the greatest Jedi of all time? Oh, did that take off?
Did it?
First thing, do you think Ray Stevenson's character Baylan survives this season?
For the sake of real world, I kind of hope not. I hope that they end the character properly and don't leave it on some crazy cliffhanger and then there's no way to fix it. But I kind of get the feeling that they're marketing the show as limited series, so I think this villain is not someone that is going to stay. Man, they did the same thing for Obi-Wan, man. They did the same thing for Obi-Wan.
They did. With Reva?
I say Ray Stevens' character dies, but not his apprentice. I think she could still be like young enough to have her own revelations and whatnot.
That's interesting. So I was thinking at it from, so there's an Inquisitor that Ahsoka fights in some forest, which actually looks like the same forest she's in her episode The Jedi. It's like the petrified trees towards the end of the trailer, if you want to find it. But so she has that duel, and unless this Inquisitor takes off the mask and it's somebody of note, I think she takes out that person. So then we also see her fighting Baylan, and does she kill him too? My thought was no, and I would assume because he looks like more of a prominent character, that fight happens later. I feel like the Inquisitor fight will be more of a teaser, and his fight with her will be later, but I mean, I'm speculating. And I was thinking that he would live. Now, that would obviously complicate things, because I think this character is going to be a big impact character. I don't think it's going to be, all due respect to fans of the character Cara Dune, I think I almost forgot about the character when season 3 came around. But I think this guy's going to have an impact in this show, like right out of the gate. And he's just a big presence, and he was very prominent in that panel at Celebration. I think they had big thoughts for that character. So, but also Star Wars likes to kill their villains. But you made a good point about the Reva flip, how she was supposed to die with the original writer, and then they had her live on. I don't know, man. I hope he, for the sake of the show, goes out in a blaze of glory for Ray Stevenson. I don't want them to do any recast or anything like that. Where
are we at as far as analyzing footage and trailers when it comes to like how often they show the first few episodes of the show? Because to me, you're right. This feels like it's the final fight.
Yeah. So I did some research on that. You'll be proud of me. I went back to the Mando first full trailer, and they show shots from episode 6, episode 7. They show shots, not big sequences, but they do show stuff from later. And that's what this sort of was. It was like a shot. There wasn't too much there. It's showing like these two are going to go head to head. So it's possible that we're seeing stuff from all over the series.
It does kind of feel like they show a lot here. They show that shot, that shot, that shot, that shot, that shot.
Well, also, let's not forget another point to bring up, which is going to tie into the whole line about heir to the Empire. That's not by mistake. And I don't think this show is going to follow that legend story. I think it's Hail Mary time. And I don't mean to be an alarmist, but Disney is taking hit after hit right now from the park side. Indy did not perform well at the box office. Elemental did not perform well. They need to sacrifice surprise to get people to want to be interested in stuff. And how do you do that in Star Wars? You light up those lightsabers and you show us some big stuff. And they may have had to rework the idea of marketing this stuff from saying, we're only going to show them stuff from the first 2 episodes, the exposition. No, you got to show some of the meat and potatoes in these trailers. So regular audiences like my brother, who barely knows who Ahsoka is, says, that looks cool. I'm going to go watch that show. So I think we are seeing more than just first 2 episodes in this trailer.
And the conversation's definitely happening too, as far as like so something like the space whales, because I guarantee you some people are seeing that and going like, "Oh, look at that! It's the Empire Strikes Back asteroid monster."
Right. Yeah.
It's like,
and
no,
real
probably
quick
not.
on the Filoni thing. I don't think that's a big deal at all. I think Filoni knows Star Wars better than we do. I think people know what he really meant. He was the greatest Jedi at one point, and he fell. And that's the biggest part of the tragedy was you had the most talented greatest Jedi who succumbed to the dark side. If he can, then anyone can. I think that's what Filoni meant. I don't think he meant like he's the greatest, even though he did those bad things. And I'd like to think people outside of Twitter are able to compartmentalize that and know what he meant.
Yeah.
So I think that's a nothing story that blew up in a tiny pocket online, and it's silly. That's my
point. There's all different ways that you can take it to, greatest being like most powerful. All right, well then, George Lucas said Luke was the most powerful Jedi at all time, but he was talking about Return of the Jedi Luke, and it's like there's so many other time frames now where we look at Luke maybe being even more powerful than he was in Return of the Jedi. And
Qui-Gon said, I don't know, didn't he say, "I foresee you being the greatest of all the Jedi"? Like,
I mean, I just think like if you're
or maybe
looking
that was Palpatine,
actually. yeah. If you're just looking at Star Wars and you're like, I don't know, kind of like taking a whole big picture of the prequels and the sequels and everything, I feel like you gotta admit that everything revolves around Anakin Skywalker being this like virgin birthed thing of the Force that was given to the world to be as powerful and as talented and everything that he is. So I think just literally saying the off the cuff statement of like, well, I mean, there was Anakin Skywalker who was the greatest Jedi of them all. It's like taken exactly how you said it, like taken in specific context. It's pretty easy to understand what
I think it was much ado about nothing. I think it just got one person makes a comment, then someone sees that and says, "I'm going to say that too," and it just turns into something silly. And Dave Filoni probably knew nothing about it, and I love it. One more super chat, and then we got to cruise on to some other stories, of course. But we have, and thank you, Freezy and Matt, for those super chats. We have Nerdy Seb. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Always helping us promote online too. Said there's a shot briefly where Ahsoka is fighting the Inquisitor and Baylan is shooting at them. So possibly the Inquisitor is maybe his own faction. Sure. I don't see those two as Inquisitors, Baylan and Shin. So what do you think, James?
Possibly the Inquisitor may be his own faction, meaning like
on his own, not with them, not with the other dark side users.
I assumed that was the case.
Like a rogue, lasting Inquisitor sort of thing.
No. I think the Inquisitors are there fighting with Palpatine. And that Inquisitor there is to represent the Empire.
Okay. So you think separate from Baylan and Shin, though?
Correct. But to be clear, I think maybe what this is implying is I think Baylan and Shin are opposite Palpatine and the Sith and everything else. I think they have their own dark agenda.
My theory, but that's interesting. I think you're probably right, though. I think that's a good call.
Because then you sort of have like different angles coming at. She's trying to figure out this evil, but it doesn't dismiss the Empire still coming at, her, and there being Inquisitors and other things that are like former Jedi and stuff. But you're right. I just don't think these people, I think they have their own agenda and what they want to do. It doesn't line up with Palpatine and the Sith or whatever the Empire's doing. Who knows if they even know that at this time? Like, I mean, you know what I'm putting together now, though? I'm putting together the timeline. Why is there an Inquisitor?
Well, that's the whole mystery.
Right.
Yeah.
This is real time live, folks. I'm like putting this together like, but hold on a second.
This is
why
years later.
Is there an Inquisitor?
Yeah. This is after
Palpatine wouldn't be around.
No, but it could be, again, people fighting in the name of Palpatine, like they say in Mandalorian, long live the Empire,
right.
There are people who still are Palpatine loyalists, and that happens all the time. I mean, look at Indy 5. Not to get too into the weeds, but you know, there were Nazis in 1969 USA. But it looks like Lacey has put an end to this debate about Filoni and the Greatest Jedi by saying, "It's me, I'm the Greatest Jedi." So,
well, she has also brought up another controversial topic. If you want to do one more super chat,
oh yes. Do we have another super chat? Let's
yeah,
see.
from her.
Oh, from Lacey. Oh, oh, okay. So Lacey Gilleran, thanks for the super chat. $1.99. So I can go buy myself a Costco hot dog and celebrate Greg Grunberg's birthday. John, what are your thoughts on Ben Solo returning? Not much. I don't think he is. I don't think Adam Driver is interested. We've talked about this, and you're just trying to get me in trouble, Gilleran, and I took the bait. So how about that? Thank you. All right. That's pretty funny, though. Lacey's like, guys, I'm reimbursing myself $1.99 tomorrow.
Yeah.
No, she didn't say that, but that's pretty funny. All right. So
well,
we have to move on because we have other stories.
we got to move on. I'm very excited for Ahsoka, and if we missed other things, feel free to throw them in the comments. Like, guys, you didn't even talk about X.
And we're going to talk about it more. This is just like, we got to get Lacey in here. We got to talk more about this as we learn more about it. And they do the classic, you know, Empire magazine stuff, Vanity Fair, more of that stuff comes out. And so we'll definitely talk more about it. This isn't the end.
All right. Well, why don't we talk a little bit about how Hasbro has released a couple figures, one being the Obi-Wan Kenobi figures. And there's the Obi-Wan Kenobi figure, and then there's also the Force Spirit Qui-Gon figure. And these both being from the Obi-Wan Kenobi show.
Yes.
Thoughts on these figures?
Did you skip the second story on purpose?
No, I didn't.
Okay, we'll go back to it. Thoughts
we'll
on
go back
figures?
to it.
You know me, I don't collect as much anymore. I went to Target the other day just for family stuff, and like I tweeted that the aisle was just empty. There was some young Jedi Adventure stuff. I don't really buy stuff online. They look cool. It bothers me that these should not be coming out over a year after the show comes out. It's just, how does that? And I know that's not Hasbro's fault. I know there's a lot of the secrecy and that they keep Qui-Gon, you know, a secret and stuff. But you and I made jokes about this on Twitter that Qui-Gon looks like half ghosted in some of the shots. In that one where he's doing the pirate stance, it looks like he was a Titanic survivor from the waist down, like in the water.
Yeah, I thought that it did look a little bit like he was just wet from the bottom down.
You said, yeah, you got to drive by from a car in a puddle.
Yeah, and he's like mad about it, the way they posed him. Like it was very odd. It also reminded me of the I put in the GIF there too of the guy who's like standing watching cricket, and he's like looking at, you know what I mean? He just looks mad, and they like zoom in on him.
Yeah. It's like that one. It's like in a different timeline on a what if like Qui-Gon and Shmi got married and she left like a giant vat of blue milk out and he fell into it up to his waist. And he's like, Shmi, you did it again.
I was just surprised they decided to pose the character in that particular like this thing, and I'm like, why? I don't know. And he looks angry in that too. It doesn't look like mysterious or something.
Qui-Gon got force ghosted just only like everywhere below where Maul killed him. Maybe that's what it is. No, I'm just kidding. The rest of them are all like blue and stuff. They look cool. I like seeing a figure of Qui-Gon in this era. I think that's awesome. I think they're very detailed. I like that the T-16 is there with Obi-Wan. I like the different variations. I think they look great. I just wish there was a bigger push, because one of the cooler parts about Star Wars that I always talk about is like going to check out the figures before the movies come out and wondering who these people are, but maybe seeing your heroes again. And I just don't like the idea of, you know, I don't even know when these come out. Did they put the release date? We got the press release.
They said you can pre-order them on the 18th,
July 18th.
But they said they were released during the fall.
All right. So a year and a half after the show comes out, you're putting out the figures. That makes 0 sense, and I don't know how anyone could justify that.
So I sort of understand the Qui-Gon one a little bit, but the Obi-Wan for me, I was like, why this Obi-Wan? I guess it's the Obi-Wan from the last scene of the show, so it's like an outfit thing, but I don't get, there's no spoiler to this. So I feel like do something different with, like, if you have an opportunity to do a character from Obi-Wan, like, I don't know, just something that feels like it had to be past that that spoiler line. You know what I mean? Although I don't know what else I don't know what else could be in the show, like,
dude, but I'm
Reva without her helmet or something.
I'm just so done with it though. Like, you know what? Instead, like, if you need to protect the secrecy so bad that you're putting out the toys almost a year and a half after the show comes out, just tell us that Qui-Gon's going to be in the show then. We don't need to be awed and surprised all the time. If they told us that he was in the show, maybe more people would have watched it from the get-go, wondering when he's going to show up. We all knew he was going to show up anyway. Worst kept secret. If that's why these figures are delayed a year and a half, it's ridiculous. I'm sorry. Like, I love being surprised in Star Wars. You brought this up a long time ago, and I've never been able to forget this. I feel like they're chasing the "I am your father" moment. They're chasing a big jaw-dropping surprise, and they love the surprise now. And I get it; it's sexy and it's very exciting. Like, oh, we're gonna get them with this twist or this surprise. But put the figures out, man. Let kids buy these things. Let collectors buy these things, and that's a part of marketing too. Is people talk about these figures, and it's like a big part of the Star Wars culture. Star Wars really, in my opinion, created the action figure phenomenon. So I just, they got to change something. I just don't know. And that's not a comment on the quality. I think Hasbro does a good job making this stuff. I just think the finger is not on the pulse from whoever makes the decisions on how this stuff gets released. And I don't think it's the toy company. So
sort of on that note, one of the comments that we got was, you know, did we want to talk about the Lego leaks for the Ahsoka thing? And it's like, I don't want to talk about it because it's a leak.
I don't want to talk about it.
But
only because it's a who cares thing.
Well, what I was gonna say is, it sort of connects with this story, and I think that's maybe what Disney is sort of wanting to do, is they're wanting to kind of keep that stuff under wraps, because when they do that, they end up with problems because somebody who's in the know is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna post that online. So yeah, it's tricky. So I think that there's kind of two minds, but I feel like they should work with people to be even more secretive as far as working with the people who are developing this stuff. Like, be more secretive with Black Series and with Hasbro, and like let them be as close to the gate as they can, so that when it is revealed to the public, then they're like already half or 75% of the way through that process to get that stuff out as fast as possible. But too often we hear that they don't even know about it until they're sitting in the theater or whatever. And it's like, can't you let some people in on this? Obviously this movie is being developed by or the show is being developed by so many graphic designers and stuff. So where's the NDA that's preventing, you at least working up to a very specific point in the process of making this content?
And speculating is a way of fan marketing, in a sense of getting buzz going about a show or a movie. I didn't feel any of that with a lot of these shows recently, but I remember when we were leading up to Solo and stuff, how excited we were trying to put the pieces together as we saw, or even the some of the sequel trilogy stuff, like, oh, who's that character? And it was like Bulio or something. We're like, who is that? That's interesting. That's pretty cool. And it doesn't give anything away, but it's just fun and it gets people talking about stuff.
Speaking of us talking about stuff, we are pushing time and we got stories to talk about. So let's go back really quick.
So yeah, we're gonna go back to our second story. But just a reminder, if you do want your question asked and Ask the Resistance, we have 2 more quick stories to get to. Then we're gonna do Ask the Resistance. So we can probably take another couple more questions. So fire them in. And also, I want people in the chat to comment on how hard they think Lacey rolled her eyes in the back of her head as me and James are making our jokes about the Qui-Gon action figure. So yeah, and yeah, to anyone, you know, if you submitted that super chat, it didn't go through. It didn't go through. Like, we've read all the ones that we have, so apologies if you're having some issues. But yeah. So James, yeah, what is that story that you leapfrogged over?
I leapfrogged over the Genevieve O'Reilly interview about playing Mon Mothma in Ahsoka, and a little bit on her character in Andor as well, and the differences between the two shows, and how she talks a little bit about how she's not really in Ahsoka for that long, and the fact that we saw it in the trailer is probably all you're going to get.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Genevieve O'Reilly discussing her character Mon Mothma?
Yeah, I think it's totally cool that they're doing this sort of, speaking of leapfrog, they're leaping over Caroline Blackiston, who played Mothma in Return of the Jedi. And it's their first recast of somebody after somebody had played them, as far as I remember, as far as I can recall, in terms of like the timeline. But in this instance, you know, there's nuance to this stuff. I don't want to see someone else playing Princess Leia, an older Princess Leia. I don't want to see, you know, Julianne Moore playing Princess Leia in The Rise of Skywalker. I'm glad they didn't do anything like that. I don't want to see someone playing. I don't care about Sebastian Stan. Get out of here. I don't want to see anyone else playing Luke Skywalker, an older Luke Skywalker. I won't see Luke Skywalker on screen. That's the younger, yes, that works. Like Ewan McGregor with Obi-Wan. Older, or like after somebody of note played a big character, that doesn't work for me. But in this instance, it's good because Mon Mothma wasn't a big player in Return of the Jedi. It was a quick one scene. I don't see it as that big of a deal if she's going to pop in here and it's Genevieve O'Reilly. I'm cool with that. So when it comes to this stuff, it's a case-by-case basis. And for a character who is a supporting, and in this time, in Andor, she's a big part. But in this timeline, she's really not. So I'm cool with her popping in, having a quick scene. They clearly wanted her there for a reason. It's not a fan service thing. I'm cool with that.
And based on the interview, it seems like she's more dialed in with Andor anyway. I think she's like, yeah, Andor is the show. It's going to be great. It's going to be amazing. The stuff they're doing over there with Ahsoka is pretty cool too. And I'm glad to be part of it. I was surprised.
I think because she's,
you know,
it's a quick thing she did with them.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's exactly that.
Yeah.
So I don't really have much more to add. I mean, it really was evident based on what she says in the story that she's, you know, excited to bring the character to multiple shows, in which she was really, just graced by the fact that John and Dave were sort of paying attention to her character and were wanting to bring her into the show, which is kind of cool to showcase sometimes, even that these actors are like, man, I don't know how they would make it possible, but like, could I show up in that show? That would be pretty neat, you know, or how could they expand their character to other roles and make them more of a long-lasting character.
James, we also have breaking news. Lacey actually sent it to our private chat that Cameron Monaghan has been cast in the new Tron. So the kid who plays Cal Kestis in the new Tron. So we don't know.
Perfect.
That's perfect. But does that stir things up about, you know, a live action Cal Kestis or whatever? I don't know, but just something to think about. We don't need to get too deep on it, but
yeah, I mean, it's Disney, and Disney loves Tron, but generally people don't love Tron. I feel like Disney really wants Tron to be a thing, and they have struggles with it. Just based on that news alone, just immediately, my first thought is they are testing him or giving him the opportunity to just see what he's like in a big role, in a big franchise, and to see maybe if he could carry an ongoing Star Wars series as a title character. You know, I think Ewan McGregor, sure, you can do that. You know, Rosario Dawson, sure, you can do that. You know, and just with this person, it's like he has his stuff, but he maybe isn't super well known, or he hasn't like led something huge yet. So I don't know, it could be that opportunity, but yeah, I personally love Tron, and I really hope that Tron 3 takes off. And yeah, I don't know.
I got some.
That's good news for me.
Tron.
I love that.
I got some Tron to watch.
Oh, we got to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So we got one more story, right?
Yes. The final story is it is about Bob Iger officially being named CEO for another 2 years through 2026. This comes from Disney as they put out a story this morning that says, that he has done so many great things. We're glad to have him. I'm paraphrasing, of course. But what makes sense for the company is to extend the contract through 2026. And we're glad to have him. I could be remembering wrong, but I also remember thinking that it was a unanimous decision to make that happen.
Yeah, I think Bob Iger is well liked and well respected.
Yeah,
I think and I think as much was said when he came back recently, last year, was his legacy is very important to him and all that stuff. And I think he probably sees that things aren't improving yet. And before you know it, he only has a year plus left on his contract. He doesn't want to leave when things are crappy. So
right.
And they may not have the right person lined up, like they tried with Bob Chapek. What this says to me from a Star Wars perspective, though, is assuming Lucasfilm stays, with Disney, Bob Iger is going to be the one to appoint the next president of Lucasfilm, because I do not think Kathleen Kennedy is going to continue beyond 2024. So that's interesting.
I mean, you've sort of been saying that for a while. Are you trying to drop a little bomb? Like, is that like a bigger opinion? No.
Oh no,
okay.
I'm just
the way you delivered it. It was like, here's the thing.
I don't know. You keep hearing stuff, and you do hear stuff from people, but I'm not, a reporter or anything anymore, or anything like that. She's going to be in her 70s. Her contract's going to be up at the end of 2024. I don't think things have been going great. I still love everything they're making, but a lot of things have been rocky. I just don't know. I don't think it's that. I keep saying this because I got to be careful with this, because I think people who love Star Wars and love all the Star Wars that's happening now, like I do, feel a responsibility to always defend Kathleen Kennedy against people who just want to hate. Mm-hmm. I think it's also okay to say, I love everything that's been made. I think some things could have been better. Clearly, there were some things that were made that suffered from production issues, like Solo. If didn't have to get filmed twice, we'd be talking about Solo 2 like they planned, stuff like that. I think it's okay to say, I love Star Wars. I love old Star Wars. I love the current stuff that they put out. But maybe it's time for a new head coach on the team. And I've been saying that analogy for a while about how I feel about the Yankees. I love the Yankees so much. I root for them every day. I get mad when they lose. I think they need a new general manager and a new coach. So it's just one of those things. I think it might be time. When assume she goes at the end of 2024, that's over 12 years. That's a long time. And she'll be in her 70s. I don't know if she wants to do it anymore. Maybe she'll be the one that says, I'm out. I'm not saying she'll be fired, but It just makes sense that when that contract's up, maybe it's time for a new voice. That's all. So, if that is the case, Iger is clearly going to be in the chair. He'll be the one to find that person.
It's interesting, given there's the writer strike going off right now, and I know they're talking about that in the chat as well. That was sort of unanticipated, but for you to say that Bob Iger would be the one who'd be choosing the next president of Lucasfilm, it's interesting, because that doesn't seem like it was maybe the plan at the time. Like, so say there's a reason he's staying on, but assuming he wasn't going to stay on, he would be leaving sometime soon, and we haven't yet got to that point with Lucasfilm. I wonder if there's somebody in mind, or if like Kathleen Kennedy is thinking in her head, like, maybe I don't have the power to do this, but this would be my suggestion, my offering, who I think should do it. And I just I don't know enough about that type of business to think who would be the obvious next person. I tried one day to look into that for Apple, like, who do people think is going to be the next one, so that when it is, you're like, oh, I've been paying attention to some of these people. But I feel like whoever it is going to be like a Bob Chapek, where like 90% of people are just going to be like, who, what?
Yeah,
it's like, maybe some people know who that is, and that is like maybe a good or a bad choice, but it's like, there's conversation about it, but I don't know. at this point who it could be who would take over.
I don't know either. And that's the thing that people, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be better. So I was talking to a mutual friend of the podcast, and I'll tell you who it is later, but I don't want to I don't know if they didn't want me to share their opinion, but they said they think it might be best if they do away with the studio of Lucasfilm and just make it a branch of Disney.
Wonder what
so
means.
that it's no longer its own independent entity, and it's just like Pixar or something that's a branch under the Disney umbrella. And I mean, I'm not saying I'd want that, because I like Lucasfilm operating independently, even though Disney does obviously have oversight.
Yeah.
But that was just something that I never thought of. So I'm just tossing that out there. That's not what I thought of, but anyway, anything else on Iger?
I don't have anything else. I think I'm excited to hear that he's sticking around for another 2 years, because again, we went through just a real bad time, and it was one of those things where, like, I even tried to give the guy the best benefit of the doubt. I'd hear bad things, and I'm like, well, you hear bad things about everybody,
Yeah.
But as it turned out, he wasn't very good, and they got rid of him. So all the bad stuff must have been true. And so I'm kind of not looking forward to the next one, because I see Bob so high, being respected internally and externally, that whoever it is going to be similar to the other Bob, probably better, but because they'll probably stick around for longer and be okay, but it does kind of bum me out that whoever is next probably isn't going to be as good as the current leader. So do you want to go ahead and Ed and go into Ask the Resistance, because we've got a ton of questions that we can get to.
Yeah, we can get to as many as we can, but let's get after it.
All right.
I've been wondering, what are midichlorians?
Okay, it is time for Ask the Resistance, and people in the live chat sent in questions, so we obviously were not able to prepare our answers, but we will do our best. And James, our first one comes from Sarah Gover in the chat. Hi, Sarah. Thank you. Sarah said, is that actually Ezra in the Ahsoka trailer in the scene talking to Sabine in the hologram? Yes.
No.
What?
Well, okay, so let's define this. That's not actually Ezra talking to Sabine. That's a recording of Ezra from when he left the message. So she's not talking to Ezra in that scene. No, Ezra is repeating the message back from, and I'm assuming this isn't like,
is that someone else?
Sarah's speculating here that there's some sort of trickery going on with that message. I just think the question is based in, are Sabine and Ezra having a conversation in that scene, or am I crazy? And I'm saying, well, it's a recording of Ezra from what he left as his final message in Rebels.
Right.
I think that's the answer.
Yeah, I'm not sure the context, Sarah. I think who we're seeing is Ezra for sure. That's that actor that was confirmed. And I agree with James. I don't think it's a conversation. I think it's more of like Princess Leia in A New Hope, where we see this message and we are the audience of the message. And that message happens to be directed to Sabine. I don't know if it's verbatim, but similar to the end of Rebels.
Yeah, I think it sounded verbatim, because I don't think we heard his voice in the other one, but in this one he says like a line or two, and it's like, oh, that's from the message.
Okay. So. All right. Next, thank you, Sarah. Next one we have Mike Rumore. What's up, buddy? He said, is the Inquisitor that we see in the Ahsoka trailer going to be Barriss Offee? I've seen this speculation a lot. I'm going to say no, because I just feel like this show is going to be so loaded with so much in a tight, quick 8 episodes, especially knowing we're a quarter of the way through the season on day 1 with 2 episodes. You got the Anakin thing hovering. You got all these new characters. To throw that wrench into the mix, I think would be a bit much. So I'm going to say no. What do you think, James? It's a very cool theory.
Yeah. I agree that it is not Baris. I don't know when that story gets told. It's kind of like a hanging fruit, and the more they tell other stories, I'm like, well, that isn't going to fit in here. The reason I'm thinking kind of isn't is we already speculated earlier that there's a scene with all three of these characters, and I feel like if you know, she takes off the mask and it's Bruce. She's like, "Oh, I used to be a Jedi, but now I'm like my own thing."
It's
you know, and it's like,
me.
yeah. And then the other guy, they're like, "Oh yeah, high five!" Like we're totally doing the same thing. It kind of just doesn't make sense. And I think that Inquisitor is probably there. Even though it was in the wrong time zone in my head, I'm still going to go with, I think that Inquisitor there is to sort of represent the Empire and the Sith and the darkness that came from the Empire. And, you know, these new villains are something different. So I'm going to say no, it's not Baris. I think they're bringing, that would be too much baggage for the limited series.
All right.
Unfortunately.
All right. Next one is going to be, get out of here, Mike. Just kidding, buddy. Next one is from Blue Jedi. What's going on? You're my boy, Blue. He said, Filoni knows where Lucas was going with it all. Do you think he will adopt or borrow from his ideas for this show or his movie? I don't. I don't. I think Lucas's story was more about Anakin and his family. I think this, while there's clear ties to it and ties to George Lucas's final contribution to Star Wars being the Clone Wars, I think this is sort of its own tangent now, and it's its own story. So I don't think anything that comes from this will be, I mean, there may be sprinkles of, oh, right, George had this idea to use this type of creature and this type of thing, but
like in some ways, how do you not use some of the ideas that George told you exclusively?
Yeah. But I think from a narrative standpoint, I think this is Filoni's. The training wheels are off, and it's his time.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I think the thing here is that George did not teach Dave where it was going and wanted him to finish that story. He taught Dave what makes Star Wars Star Wars.
Yeah.
And then he said, these are the fundamentals. Go tell more Star Wars stories.
If it's rooted in this fabric,
then you know it will fundamentally be Star Wars.
Yeah, because I don't even know. I mean, like, it's the funny old adage that we don't even know that George Lucas knew where Star Wars was going. So
right, that too.
All right, well, let's do one more, and that's going to be David Probus, who said, "How much Thrawn will we see in this series? Do you think they give him the Gideon treatment?" Ooh, what do you think, James?
I think that we will see a decent amount of Thrawn, but he's not dying in this series. I think that what they're doing with this series, Gideon is, I know what you're getting at, David, giving him the Gideon treatment, but Gideon has continued to be the villain for 3 seasons in a way. So they aren't like killing off that character or, you know, throwing him in jail and then bringing in a new villain in season 2. It has felt a little bit like that Gideon has continually pulled the strings for a while. So I think that Thrawn will be the person who has, even above him, been pulling the strings for a while. And that will go beyond Ahsoka because we know more is coming.
Yeah. I think that's. I don't have anything else to add. I think Thrawn will be featured more prominently here than Gideon was, especially in recent Mando. But I hope so anyway. I'm really, Lars Mikkelsen. He was good in Rebels with the voice, but just seeing him in person at Celebration and how he commanded that, he owned that room in Celebration, and that really, he walked out. The tall posture and slow, methodical movements. The guy sold me. I'm really excited to see and what he brings to the table in live action. So thanks for the question, David.
And to follow up with that, he is clarifying with me. Oops.
Oh, sorry.
But he is clarifying with me that he didn't mean killing him. He meant just showing him in like one episode. And I think that he will be in more than one episode. I think yeah, I think that Thrawn will be someone that they sort of show as, I don't know, as that looming person above this all, even though it is focused on these other villains. I don't know. I hope that he is in more than one episode, and I'm going to stand by. I just think they're not going to do that.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Let us head to the end of the show. We did have one more super chat. I don't really want to read this, but I will because it's a super chat. But Toon Raider finally got a super chat in. He said, John, I didn't think saying I'm not seeing Indy 5 would get me blocked on Twitter. I apologize to you personally. That's all I was trying to say. If you get blocked on Twitter by me, you got to do something bad because there are people I really don't like that I don't block. So I don't know what your Twitter handle is. If I blocked you by accident, my apologies. You can email us and let me know what your handle is, and I'll take a look at it. But if you got blocked, there's probably a pretty good reason why you got blocked. But thank you for the super chat. If it was a mistake, we'll find out. Thanks for watching. I'm sure you're cool. And you have, looks like a Dragon Ball as your icon. So maybe you're James and you're just playing with me. I don't know. People do weird things online these days. Trust me. All right. That takes us to the end of the show. Again, I want to thank everybody for being with us live, or if you're listening on your favorite audio podcast app. Either way, thank you so much for being a part of TRB. It means a great deal to all of us. Lacey, get well soon. Thanks for being in the chat and having fun with everybody. We hope you get well soon and get back in the base as soon as possible. Of course, at Lacey Gilleran on social media apps, and I think TikTok, she's like,
it's Lacey Gilleran.
It's Lacey Gilleran. Yeah, because I took at Lacey Gilleran on TikTok. I don't know if she knows that. Like, I took that, so I'm using that. All right. Well, a big thank you to our patrons, by the way, too. The reason why this show exists and all the other stuff we're able to do is because of our Patreon support. Anything that happens with TRB, we don't have producers. I don't know why some podcasts need producers. It's the three of us doing this thing. I got my two kids to bed just before I came down here. It's real stuff, and your support allows us to keep doing this stuff and growing. And we have a lot of goals, and you allow us to try to achieve those and make those happen. And if you want to join us, go to patreon.com/resistancebroadcast. Tiers start at just $5. Support goes a long way, and we got the Ahsoka stuff coming up soon. It's a good time to join us. So go check out the tiers. There's a lot of different benefits and perks to those tiers. We take pride in our Patreon, and we like to give back as a thank you for support. So go check it out. Patreon.com/resistancebroadcast. And a special thank you to our generals and spice runners: Carmelo, John RISI, Jetta Rosewater, Frank Grande, Darth Hurricane, Nick KRATZ, Christian Morales, Brian Smith, Matt Chitty, Danny, Mike Rumore, Matt Heath, Brendan McLaughlin, Count Pepto, Sneaky Zebra, Aaron Ellington, Micah Harrison, Colin Cormier, Jolton Jedi DiMaggio, and Diana. And our Spice Runners: David Probus, Neil Shaw, Kendall Gelner, Dave Hornack, Thomas Hennessy, Andrew Staley, Jeremy Myers, Michael Fry, and the Fort Worthian. And thank you to all of our Patreon supporters and all of our listeners. However you're a part of TRB, it means a lot to us. Thank you very much. Johnny Hoey on Twitter for me. My movie podcast, Just Like the Movies, is on a little bit of a hiatus. I don't want to get into it, but there's a lot of personal life stuff going on that makes scheduling very tough for me right now. But I'm glad to be here with you all today, and I promise we'll get back to you soon with that. We're doing Titanic next, so check that out. But James, how about you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram both, and Threads at Myra Trunks.
Yes. And we will, well, first of all, we hope everyone has a wonderful weekend, and we'll be back with a new episode on Monday where we're going to talk to a guest. We're going to have Jackson Hall on the podcast, and we're going to talk about how Star Wars has influenced filmmakers of all kinds, from the James Camerons of the world to fan filmmakers, and we're going to have a good chat doing that. But before that, we hope you enjoyed the show. We hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next time right here on the Resistance Broadcast. We'll see you around, kids.